Hello and welcome to another basic building block of code. Okay, what we're going to look at today is checkboxes and radio buttons, and these are things we find all over the place. So you could find these things on the web, so that would be with something like HTML. You can find them in general purpose computers such as your standard PC. And in that case, it's any number of programs will actually use these. So you could create them with Visual Basic, the C family, so I'll put C# there because we're going to cover it later, Java. You could create it in Python. Is almost everything will actually work on those. You could go even further now with the modern Internet of Things and universal apps. So the Internet of Things, where you have small screens, so touch screens. They're everywhere. The key thing about them is that they all obey the same set of rules. So I want to teach you what those rules are so that you know how to handle them and when to actually create which one. So let's start with an example. I'm going to use a checkbox. Now in this example, I'm hungry, I want a sandwich. That's all great. So I'm thinking, well, okay, well, what kind of sandwich shall I go for? Well, obviously I'm going to have bread. So I'll put a check there. Let's also think, okay, I want cheese. I'm going to put another check there, a little cross, and tomato, check. I don't particularly want ham. That's not something I want. So what we've got here is I can choose more than one option at the same time. The other thing is this can be grouped. So this is an option for sandwiches and all the things that I want to make my sandwich from. And we're using a checkbox because I can select more than one thing there. Another thing to note, our checkbox is square. Fits nicely with putting a cross in it, goes from corner to corner. All checkboxes are represented by squares of some form. Sometimes they're chamfered, but they're squares. Now, the other thing is I can group them and I could have more than one checkbox there. So maybe as well as that, I could choose the type of bread I want. So I could have maybe white bread, brown, or say gluten-free. And with these again, I could have my checkboxes. And again, this will be in its own little group. Now it's important to group things properly, and you can get different groupings can occur with different types software. But now when I make my selection, I say, okay, I want gluten-free bread, please. It knows that that is the selection for bread and these are the selections for what I want to have with my sandwich. So I can have on the same page two separate groups, and I have to denote that they're two separate groups in some form. Okay, let's finish with the checkbox. Let's take a look now at radio buttons. Radio button is very different. Say I'm listening to Radio 4 and all of a sudden I've had enough of listening to Radio 4. Maybe I'm driving along, or Radio 4 Extra, and I want to listen to a bit of more upbeat music. So I've gone to Radio 1 and I'm now listening to Radio 4. In the act of me selecting Radio 1, I've had to deselect, in this case, Radio 4 Extra automatically. And I think, okay, I've had enough of that, I want Radio 3. Well, Radio 1 is now no longer selected, only Radio 3 is. So think of it like the radio in your car. You can only ever listen to one radio station at one time. And in choosing another radio station, it will automatically deselect your first choice. Again, with this, you can group them. So you can have different options again in different groupings, exactly the same way you can with a checkbox. You can even on the same page have radio buttons and checkboxes and other input methods we'll talk about another time. Okay. Right, but the key thing is you only ever select one and it will unselect the other. One other thing, we've just, as you always know, you've got a checkbox because it's square. You always know you've got a radio button because these radio buttons are beautifully round. So when you see a round button, you know there's only ever one option for it. Okay, right. Let's have a quick look and recap and see the things that we need to know now. Okay, there's two things. There's a checkbox. Checkboxes are square, and you can have more than one choice per group. I should say at a time. They can be grouped. Right. The other thing you have is radio buttons. They are round. Only one choice per group. And again, they can be in more than, you can have more than one group on the same page. There we go. The other thing to note with these is that you can find them almost everywhere on the web, on applications, and on devices on touch screens. Right, nice and simple. Checkboxes and radio buttons. Thank you.